תסבירי לי איך את רואה את הדברים. חדות אני יודע שיש לך, ויכולת לקלוט את כל המידע.
מבצעים עלינו נוהל חניבל.
תסבירי.
זה הכל. ממשלת ישראל, הקבינט שלי, ראש הממשלה שלי, שר הביטחון שלי, מבצע על המשפחה שלי, על האזרחים שלנו, על אזרחיות ואזרחים שנחטפו מביתם, נוהל חניבל. ממשיכים לחימה, למרות שצריך להפסיק אותה. מדברים איתנו על לחץ שעוזר ואמור לקדם עסקה, אבל אנחנו רואים שלא רק שהוא לא מקדם שום דבר, אם הוא היה מקדם לא היו משיגים כוחות, לא היו משחררים את גולני, לא היו מוציאים אנשים מעזה. ומצד שני אנחנו שומעים על חטופים שלנו שנהרגים, מאבדים את חייהם, נרצחים על ידי חמאס בשל הלחץ הצבאי. איתי סבירסקי, רק אתמול נודע לכולנו, אבל אנחנו כבר יודעים יותר מזה, מהניתוח של צה"ל לגבי מה קרה שם, ואנחנו מבינים, ורון שרמן וניק, ואנחנו מבינים שאנחנו הורגים את אנשינו. זאת אמירה מאוד מאוד קשה, ולא פשוט לי להגיד אותה.
אנחנו לא הספקנו לדווח על זה, אבל כן, יש היום דוח של צה"ל, דוח פתולוגי, שאומר שלא יודעים ממה הם...
אני שוחחתי עם דוקטור מעיין שרמן, אימא של רון, היום בבוקר.
כן, היא כועסת מאוד.
כן, אני חושבת שאם הייתי במקומה, המילה כעס לא הייתה מתאימה, אבל אנחנו שואגות את כל מה שיש לנו, ועדיין מבצעים על האזרחים של מדינת ישראל נוהל חניבל, משמידים אותם על ידי הממשלה.
All right. Oh, hey, look at that. There it is, Mr. Jonathan. How are you, sir? Welcome to news from the Pew. Your only source, well, no, one of many sources of news where we talk about stuff, but our stuff is better. Anyway, I'm your host, Rick Barrett. I'm the Armed Catholic, and I'm happy to have you guys with us on this Thursday afternoon. A little early today because I'm running around trying to get ready to go to the Catholic Men's Conference in the Carolinas.
You're a VIP.
Huh?
You're doing what VIP people do.
Yeah, it's not very important person. Very.
You got to meet up with Kelsey and Tay, and then you
come
out.
Right, yes. Well, she's letting me fly in the jet when she goes to get milk. She's going to swing by and come and get me. Yeah, thank you guys for hanging out with us a little early because I'm going to be hanging out with that guy, Mr. Steve Cunningham, tomorrow. He doesn't know it, but I am. And then definitely on Saturday. And of course, you know, if we're lucky and blessed, maybe Jonathan will join us as well. You never know. But Jonathan, in the great state of Georgia, how are you, my friend? Good. Always great to see you.
Likewise.
Excellent. And of course, Mr. Cunningham, the godfather of Catholic alternative media. Always great to be with you as well. And of course, tomorrow when I actually get to see you, give you a big old bear hug, you know, because brothers don't shake hands, brothers hug. And we'll definitely make sure that happens. So
I wish I had pulled that clip. I wasn't expect that. Brothers gotta hug.
Brothers don't shake hands, brothers gotta hug. And maybe I did eat paint chips as a kid. We don't know. But we got some stuff to talk about, some topical stuff, a lot of foreign policy. Talk about SCOTUS today, reviewing Trump's Colorado Supreme Court case, and wherever else this little program goes. But let's get started, Steve, with our first news clip, and we will head on from there.
I think that the question that you have to confront is why a single state should decide who gets to be president of the United States. In other words, you know, this question of whether a former president is disqualified for insurrection to be president again is, you know, just say it. It sounds awfully national to me. So whatever means there are to enforce it would suggest that they have to be federal, national means. Why does, you know, if you weren't from Colorado and you were from Wisconsin or you were from Michigan, and it really, you know, what the Michigan Secretary of State did is going to make the difference between, you know, whether candidate A is elected or candidate B is elected. I mean, that seems quite extraordinary, doesn't it?
No, Your Honor, because ultimately it's this court that's going to decide that question of federal constitutional eligibility and settle the issue for the nation. And certainly it's not unusual that questions of national importance come up.
Well, I
through a
suppose
particular
this
state.
court would be saying something along the lines of that a state has the power to do it. But I guess I was asking you to go a little bit further and saying, why should that be the right rule? Why should a single state have the ability to make this determination, not only for their own citizens, but for the rest of the nation?
Because Article 2 gives them the power to appoint their own electors as they see fit. But if they're going to use a federal constitutional qualification as a ballot access determinant, then it's creating a federal constitutional question that then this court decides, and other courts, other states, if this court affirms the decision below, determining that President Trump is ineligible to be president, other states would still have to determine what effect that would have on their own state's law and state procedure.
Well, I mean,
if
if we affirmed and we said he was ineligible to be president, yes, maybe some states would say, well, you know, we're going to keep him on the ballot anyway. But I mean, really, it's going to have, as Justice Kagan said, the effect of Colorado deciding, and it's true, I just want to push back a little bit on, well, it's a national thing because this court will decide it. You say that we have to review Colorado's factual record with clear error as the standard of review. So we would be stuck, the first mover state here, Colorado, we're stuck with that record. And, you know, I don't want to get into whether the record, I mean, maybe the record is great, but what if the record wasn't? I mean, what if it wasn't a fulsome record? What if, you know, the hearsay rules are, you know, one-offs? Or what if this is just made by the Secretary of State without much process at all? How do we review those factual findings? Why should clear error review apply? And doesn't that just kind of buckle back into this point that Justice Kagan was making, you know, that we made with Mr. Mitchell, too, that it just doesn't seem like a state call?
3 points, Your Honor. The first is that ordinarily, of course, this court reviews factual findings for clear error, but President Trump made the point in his reply brief that sometimes on constitutional questions that require a uniform resolution, this court can do something more like a Bose Corp-style independent review of the factual record. And we would have no objection to that, given that the record here, really the facts that are disputed here are incredibly narrow. The essence of our case is President Trump's own statements that he made in public view for all to see.
But then that's saying that in this context, which is very high stakes, if we review the facts essentially de novo, you want us all to just watch the video of the ellipse and then make a decision without any deference to or guidance from lower court fact-finding? That's unusual.
Well, ultimately, President Trump himself urges this court to decide the merits of his eligibility on the factual record here at page 2 of his brief. He's never at any point in this proceeding suggested there was something else that needed to be in the factual record, any other witnesses that he wanted to call to present his case. And again, the essence of our case is his own statements, and in particular, his own videotaped statements on the ellipse.
Mr. Murray, just to circle back to, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to, before we left it, I wanted to circle back to where Justice Kagan was. Do you agree that the state's powers here over its ballot for a federal officer election have to come from some constitutional authority?
Members of this court have disagreed about that.
I'm asking you.
The majority of this court has said that those powers come from Article 2, but we think that the result is the same whether the court locates it in Article 2 or in a reserved power under the 10th Amendment.
But you accept that this court has held. You're not contesting this or asking us to revisit that decision in Thornton or term limits or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of verbal whooping, but it's a very intimidating experience for people that never have argued a case in front of SCOTUS, because you are standing. There's actually this movie called Gideon's Trumpet. I think one of the Fondas was in it back in it was a TV movie. It's the most accurate representation of how to argue in front of the court. You stand at this podium and you make their case, and you're in front of all 9 justices, and they just fire questions at you. There's no order. They just do it whenever they want. And you heard him start to stumble through, because if one of them picks up a case that they want to just nail you on, they'll do it. And it's amazing. Of course, I don't know if Steve doesn't mind. This is how Trump.
I'm a believer in our country, and I'm a believer in the Supreme Court. I listened today, and I thought our arguments were very, very strong. An argument that is very important is the fact that you're leading in every race, you're leading in every state, You're leading in the country against both Republican and Democrat. And Biden, you're leading in the country by a lot. And can you take the person that's leading everywhere and say, hey, we're not going to let you run? You know, I think that's pretty tough to do, but I'm leaving it up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so there you go. John, we're going to play one more video from Kavanaugh, and then I'm going to go right to you. I want your thoughts on this
opportunity
whole
to
thing.
call witnesses remotely. He didn't use all of his time at trial. There was ample process here, and this is how ballot access determinations in election cases are decided all the time.
Okay. Second question. Some of the rhetoric of your position, I don't think it is your position, but some of the rhetoric of your position seems to suggest unless the states can do this, no one can prevent insurrectionists from holding federal office. But obviously Congress has enacted statutes, including one still in effect, Section 2383 of Title 18 prohibits insurrection. It's a federal criminal statute. And if you're convicted of that, you are, it says, shall be disqualified from holding any office. And so there is a federal statute on the books, but President Trump has not been charged with that. So what are we to make of that?
Two things, Your Honor. Section 2383 was initially enacted about 6
Muted. So yeah, that's a lot of stuff that's going on there, man. John, your idea and your thoughts about just listening to that and the possibility that Colorado is trying to argue, well, it's a national thing, and so we should be able to do this blah 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 site and all these nonsensical arguments. Your thoughts?
I mean, it's kind of another instance of might makes right, you know. And so basically, whoever has the power to do because I mean, to presume that even a group of judges in this instance could or would be impartial is, I mean, it's ridiculous. But it's part of a how do I want to put it? Seems to me, or this is kind of going out on a limb here. It seems to me it's kind of part of the early American myth that extended in a certain sense, even or accepted rather by certain Catholics, that, you know, the more checks and balances you have, then the better chance you have of, you know, at least keeping things away from the sort of tyranny they were trying to avoid, said the founders, like in the Federalist Papers, and kind of the good, you know, philosophical debates that were going back and forth. But I mean, the problem is when what they're essentially getting into is kind of like a true Pelagianism. Like for Catholics, that registers, you know. Pelagian, like, who was Pelagius? What did Pelagius argue for? And it's kind of just forgetting what human nature is all about. And so, I mean, to assume that eventually, even if it is a higher, how do I want to say, like a higher hurdle to jump over, eventually you're still going to be able to corrupt even a group like that, even a group of judges like that. So I mean, whether the argument is good enough on its own merits, I mean, it seems absolutely ridiculous for a state to say, sorry, people, you know, we know better than you do, so just shut up and let us do what we're going to do here. That seems ridiculous on any sort of grounds, you know, for a state that is supposed to allow voting like this. So, you know, it seems to me that on the merits of the case, the Supreme Court has not a leg to stand on there. Or the ones arguing, at least, you know, for excluding Trump's name. But, you know, be all that as it may, it's still the deeper and deeper we get into this, and the more we kind of see things work out, even on the Republican side. Matt, to be honest, like I seriously thought that, assuming, you know, kind of a fair vote and all, I seriously thought that more people would be so super excited about Vivek Ramaswamy that, I mean, I thought Trump was going to be blasted in the first few primaries because he's just he did such a bad job the last year of COVID, you know, and then, I mean, it was under his watch that last year that, I mean, our country had a transformation unlike any other transformation in its history, in my opinion. I mean, I could at least top 5. I don't think anybody would deny that, probably even top 3. I don't see how anybody can deny that the transformation the country went under the last year of Trump's presidency was greater than almost anything the country's ever seen, and not for the good by anybody's standard, except for maybe the uber wealthy. So it seemed to me that we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now. So that just shows you how little I foresee. But it's still it makes me think more and more every day that I won't say all of it's rigged, but a lot of this is rigged so that Trump is still actually in the picture, because otherwise, who actually a lot. I mean, I was kind of enthusiastic before Trump in the early days, and even up until like 2018 and 19. Up until maybe the bombings of Syria and all. But who is still enthusiastically for Trump and not just saying, well, he's getting shafted so much now that might as well it's better him than somebody else. I don't know many people, so maybe you guys do. I mean, I don't maybe listen out enough, but I don't know. I'm surprised that enough people can still deal with the narcissism and the horrible record during the last year of his presidency to even have this be a debate worth having. You know what I'm saying? So that, I don't know. That's kind of what comes to my head after the whole merits of the case thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good point. I really think it's people have short memories, especially when they're like, "Oh, things were better under Trump," right? It's the rose-colored glasses thing. Maybe true, but it's still the case. And secondly, and then I'll throw this to Steve. Americans really, as a union, really like a martyr, and what they've done to Trump over the last couple of years has really put him into the underdog / martyr type of conversation where they're like singling him out for all of these things. I think we talked about in this program during 2020, the best thing they could have done is just let him go away. You could just let him go away, and he could have yelled and screamed from Florida, and everybody would have just been like, whatever, dude, you lost, blah, 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 blah. But the fact that they constantly go after him and they constantly keep him in the spotlight, it's really of their own doing. My opinion, take it for what it is. Steve, your thoughts on all of this and the fact that this is now, and I know Steve loves it, it's a national conversation because, and I'll throw this, let me, stream of conscience. Sorry. I want Steve to respond to this and then John. It's funny that the Supreme Court is worried about one state deciding the election, but in 2020, when you had Texas suing Pennsylvania and other states saying like, hey, they're deciding the election with their wonky voting things going on, SCOTUS was like, it'll be fine, don't worry about it. So it's very interesting. Like now they're worried about one state stepping in, but back in 2020, they couldn't be bothered. Anyway, Steve, your thoughts.
Well, in that case, because that was when I was on the other show and Dr. Marsh was on with us, and he was arguing against that Pennsylvania and them couldn't do that. And I was no, it's federalism right there. It's those states for what they were trying to do. They were trying to change how the voting procedure was going. They have the whole right. They want to do that. They can do that. What Colorado's trying to do is trying to kick them off for the insurrection thing. And it's funny. It's we'll find out in a couple hours that it's either going to be 8-1 or 9-0, and Colorado's going to look like a bunch of fools. Really, I haven't heard this one, but I wanted to see what Justice Thomas said.
Under their Article 1 and Article 2 powers to run elections.
But it would seem that particularly after Reconstruction and after the Compromise of 1877 and during the period of Redeemers, that you would have that kind of conflict. There were a plethora of Confederates still around. There were any number of people who would continue to either run for state offices or national offices. So it would seem that would suggest that there would at least be a few examples of national candidates being disqualified, if your reading is correct.
Well, there were certainly national candidates who were disqualified by Congress refusing to seat them.
I understand that, but that's not this case. Did states disqualify them? That's what we're talking about here. I understand Congress would not seat them.
Other than the example I gave, no. But again, Your Honor, that's not surprising because there wouldn't have been – states certainly wouldn't have the authority to remove a sitting federal officer. So what was the purpose of Section 3? The states were sending people. The concern was that the former Confederate states would
this reminds me of the Rocky. Throw in the towel on this one.
Continue being bad actors. Beating. And the effort was to prevent them from doing this. And you're saying that, well, this also authorized states to disqualify candidates. So what I'm asking you for, if you are right, what are the examples?
Well, Your Honor, the examples are states excluded many candidates for state office, individuals holding state offices. We have a number of published cases of states
I
considering
understand that. I understand the states
You won't answer the
controlling
question.
state elections and state positions. What we are talking about here are national candidates. I understand.
This is why it's hard to
look at
argue.
Foner or Foote, Shelby Foote, or McPherson. They all talk about, of course, the conflict after the Civil War, and there were people who felt very strongly about retaliating against the South, the radical Republicans. But they did not think about authorizing the
Holy crap, he talked about the radical Republicans.
South to disqualify national candidates. And that's the argument you're making. And what I would like to know is do you have any examples of this?
Many of those historians have filed briefs in our support in this case, making the point that the idea of the 14th Amendment was that both states and the federal government would ensure rights, and that if states failed to do so, the federal government certainly would also step in. But I think the reason why there aren't examples of states doing this is an idiosyncratic one of the fact that elections worked differently back then. States have a background power under Article 2 and the 10th Amendment to run presidential elections. They didn't use that power to police ballot access until about the 1890s. And by the 1890s, everyone had received amnesty and these issues had become moot. So I don't think the history tells us.
Sort of look at Justice Thomas's question sort of from the 30,000-foot level. I mean, the whole point of the 14th Amendment was to restrict state power, right? States shall not abridge privileges immunity. They won't deprive people of property without due process. They won't deny equal protection. And on the other hand, it augments.
It was all about slavery. I was talking about the slave.
And in federal power under Section 5. Congress has the power to enforce it. So wouldn't that be the last place that you'd look for authorization for the states, including Confederate states, to enforce, implicitly authorized, to enforce the presidential election process? That seems to be a position that is at war with the whole thrust of the 14th Amendment. And
dude, that was a fun. I'm glad I found that one. That was a good verbal beatdown that Thomas just gave him on that.
I mean, it's real hard to try and do, argue in front of SCOTUS because they can come out of left field or something like that.
Does Jason have to update his CV after this?
Yeah, what, as a beatdown, as a victim?
He's the attorney arguing this case, and I am getting destroyed.
It happens more often than you would think. We don't listen to him often, but a lot of times, I know in the there was one a couple years ago where the attorney just literally just stopped halfway through because he was getting peppered with questions from. He's like, I don't know. I don't know, man. I don't know this was my argument. You guys have ripped it apart and I'm going to go home now because
I can't believe he kept trying to bring up the 10th Amendment on this. Come on, dude.
Right. Now we're in favor of the 10th Amendment.
Yeah. Well, they did that. They did that for the green gold out there. It was state rights for Colorado was the marijuana.
Yeah.
But going back with what Jonathan, you guys were talking about with, just like how Trump was selected the first time around as the steam releaser after 8 years of Obama. We just have 4 years of Brandon, and how many people are mad as you know what and not going to take it anymore. That whole thing they keep saying. And yeah, if you're right. If they would have just shut up and just let it go, people would have forgotten about it. But no, they had to keep it on the front burner because they want the conflict. They want my team versus your team. How's that going every day? And then get to the boiling point that people are looking at it going, oh, we got wars everywhere. We'll get into that later. We got price. No one could pay for groceries. The whole the student loan bubble fiasco is getting worse and worse. I mean, people go grocery shopping. All the money's going to groceries, and they're trying to figure out how to pay bills. I know my wife and we talk about all the time. How do people do it? We're barely making by. And we're still renting. There's no way anybody right now in my situation can buy a house. with the rates and all that. So people are looking at going, man, if we just get Trump back, yeah, we can have gas back at $1.50 or $2 or something like that. Whereas instead of paying $80 to fill up your tank, maybe it's $30. That goes a long way. So maybe that's another thing about another steam release in a sense until Michelle O comes in. I know I said that I send videos of Rick all the time about that. Beck, I think Beck watches because we've been talking about it so long.
No, Glenn Beck cried for 15 minutes and then said Michelle Obama was going to be the nominee. That doesn't sway me in any way, shape, or form. He's just repeating what Whitlock said. Everybody, it's a sexy pick to say Michelle O because the idea of running Joe Biden again is so fathomably just unreasonable that it's like a fantasy draft.
He is kicking tail in these primaries. I mean, he's running against nobody, but he's kicking tail. He's literally.
Well, we know that none of the above is actually a pretty popular pick in some places. But
Nikki can't beat nobody. Biden can beat nobody, but Nikki can't beat nobody.
She can't. Not with a rubber hose. And the fact is that, she's not going to be. I mean, I will bet you the finest Walmart steak that she is not going to be the nominee. You have my word on this.
You can find some good Walmart steak.
I'm betting you the finest Walmart steak, she will not be the nominee. I'm telling you this. Put it on the ballot. It's recorded. It's not going to happen. But the fact of the matter is, this is a huge deal. The only reason I say 8-1 is there's some rumblings that Sotomayor is just going to be petulant and just say, that Colorado has a case just to do it. But Kagan, when Kagan's beating you down with that line of questioning, you're like, the guy's like, I'm done.
He just threw his papers up and said, I'll see you next time. Let's go in.
Yeah.
Let's go to Walmart.
Yeah, we'll go to Walmart. Might as well. But just lastly, gentlemen, the idea, and of course, another reason John brought this up, the posturing and the way this is being framed, having Trump back and so forth, but the way this is being framed as a national issue, right? That only SCOTUS can come in and save us from this problem. You even heard the attorney from Colorado arguing that you guys are going to decide this. You guys are going to be doing this. And the fact that this is being thrown back at the feet of Washington, D.C., because especially in light of what's happening in Texas and all this other kind of stuff, let's reaffirm that D.C. is the be all end all when it comes to deciding this stuff.
In this situation, I hate to say yes, it has to be this way because
Mark.
Yeah, I know. Well, is
that broken clock? Is that a broken clock right there?
I know, right? I hate to say it, but the states can't pick and choose. As who was it that was it Thomas that said that, or was it Gorsuch that said that for a national level, for the federal level, the states can't pick and choose. Oh, well, this guy's not going to run. This guy can't run. Now, it did happen in the 1860 election. Was it? But it was the sense that those elections Lincoln knew that he couldn't win in the South, so they didn't even send the papers down there to get him on the ballot. So that's why the people have said he wasn't on the ballot in the South, but that was because he knew he wasn't going to have a shot at what. So why even bother, especially at a time when it wasn't like electrical and digital and all this to be able to throw it in. So Colorado just can't say that, or Jersey can't just take him out. This is on a federal level. That's what Thomas was going. Yes, states haven't done it. Show me an example of a state, because that whole Reconstruction thing was. That's why everyone was ticked in the South, because you had the North coming down saying you can't even vote in your own town anymore. You're going to live our way, Yankeeism. You can't say we're going to make our way upon you, and you have no say anymore. The states let somebody could run for a state house, fine, but they were not letting them into a federal level anymore. Hence the whole insurrection BS and all that from that.
Yeah. I want to transition real quick and do the Tucker Vlad stuff before John has to dip out, and I want to get his opinion on this.
Well, that's why the rule is coming out today, so that they could have the Tucker thing without anybody worrying about it.
Exactly. So big news. Tucker went to Russia to interview Vlad. And of course, everybody's freaking out about this. It's going to go live
Russian
on Twitter and
president's
all these places
spokesperson
tonight
has
at 6.
confirmed that Vladimir Putin has recorded an interview with American journalist Tucker Carlson here in Moscow. Dmitry Peskov says the conversation took place on Tuesday. Mr. Carlson has promised to release the video soon. Meanwhile, his teaser announcement posted on the X platform has already garnered more than 66 million views. It also marks the first time the Russian president has sat down with a Western journalist since the outbreak of the Ukraine conflict almost 2 years ago.
At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of.
Go ahead and let John go before he has to leave. We'll play the rest of the video after.
Yeah, your thoughts, John. Go.
Oh, I mean, I just think it's an interesting way of describing the reason for the interview that Tucker gave in his little, 2-minute clip or so on it. And it made me think kind of I don't know if Tucker realized this because it seemed like he was in a hurry and maybe even kind of winded when he was recording it there. Maybe it was because the wind was blowing there, it seemed like. But the way he framed the reason for the debate, needing to hear what Vlad the Killer was going to say, just interesting the name too. Thinking back to kind of the evangelization of the Slavs. But in any case, like either Tucker's right, and we deserve to hear what Putin had to say a year or two more ago, or like if you think about it, if you break down the options there, if we should not have heard his voice this long and should not continue to hear his voice, like what does that imply? I mean, if it implies that I doubt that anybody would try to make the argument he's too much of a rhetorical genius. Anybody that's not already a Russian sympathizer or whatever else. I know it's meaner the terms now, so like mean girls are calling us worse terms. But let's just say Russian sympathizer. If they probably wouldn't just say that anybody else would be overtaken by his rhetoric and wooed in to be a Russian sympathizer. So they'd really be back into a corner of saying we're too likely to be tricked into believing him and into believing that he has kind of a good point there, and maybe we shouldn't be just unilaterally supporting everything that Zelensky's pushers are telling us to do. And so, if you think about it like that, that really comes down to the sort of brain exercise, a sort of mental exercise that most of us just don't do with the situations that are out there in politics. But that if we did do something like that, if we tried to say, all right, like, what are the implications of what we're not being told, what we're not being allowed to hear right now? Like that, I get it. Tucker's big, and I got to go right after this, but Tucker's big on the whole, free speech thing. And I get it, at times for us, it can seem like it's a little bit almost too much cheerleading for free speech. But he's a brilliant guy. And I don't doubt that there are some really philosophically astute folks working with him who think of ways to kind of frame this sort of stuff before you get into the interview where it seems it's very kind of free form. And like they see that these are the options. Like it's one of two ways here of looking at it. And if people were going to do anything and everything to keep us from hearing Putin's side of the story, hearing him in his own words, then that really is what it boils down to. If you reduce it, the so-called reductio, logically, then they're saying like we might potentially be tricked by this guy, and so if you don't want to conclude that Vlad is just like a super genius, then the conclusion is like we human beings can be tricked in matters like this pretty easily if we're not careful. And then people start following that line of thinking. They say, wait, if I could be fooled by this, and I'm trying to be fair here and judicious, I wonder if our leaders, the ones who are actually making the decisions about where the money's going and who's getting the arms here, I wonder if they could be fooled. And, if I might be influenced by money or pleasure or fame or name any of the other goods or whatnot of this world, I wonder if someone else might be influenced by that. So like, at the very least, having a conversation like this that's now part of the public conversation. I mean, everybody else seems to be talking about it over the last day or two. It's interesting because hopefully it gets people to start asking a little bit more of the deeper questions. And I mean, for that one thing alone, I think we should be very, very grateful, because that's a sort of Socratic question that folks need to be asking before it gets too late and we get too, embedded in something crazy. But
Amen. Yeah, greatly appreciate it. Thank you, John, for your contribution today. It's always great. We'll talk to you soon, man. God bless.
God bless you guys.
All right.
The
Now
other
it's just
country
Steve and I. So
We'll play the rest of the Tuck clip.
involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too. Freedom of speech is our birthright. We were born with the right to say what we believe. That right cannot be taken away no matter who is in the White House.
Everyone is talking about this interview. Now we have the confirmation from Dmitry Peskov that it actually has taken place. Now, Russian journalists have been all over Tucker Carlson ever since he arrived here. Everyone's trying to find out, when will it air? When will we see the interview? He's being coy about it. This morning, for example, a journalist asked him, and Tucker Carlson said, "What interview? I don't know what you're talking about," in his humorous way, of course. What are we seeing in the Western media? They're portraying Tucker Carlson as doing the Kremlin's bidding, as a Putin sympathizer, that he's in cahoots with the Kremlin, and this is all part of the Kremlin propaganda. And in fact, Tucker Carlson is saying, hey guys, I'm only doing my job. I'm a journalist, and journalists are supposed to ask questions from all sides.
Of course, Carlson is now just another far-right conspiracy peddler with a show on the internet. He's no longer on Fox, as we all know.
Perhaps we need a total and complete shutdown of Tucker Carlson re-entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what is going on.
So in the West, being a journalist and doing your job is apparently a crime. And this is why we're seeing all these headlines now. But when it comes to Vladimir Zelensky, everyone, over the past 2 years, we've been seeing how he's been doing the media rounds in the West, constantly begging for money, whining about how he's not getting enough support, not getting enough money, not getting enough weapons. And they're all eating it up. No one is even questioning Zelensky's statements or the fairy tales that he's selling.
Since the day the war in Ukraine began, American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people.
People in the West have to recognize it. Not our values, common values. Not our war, common war. We pay the highest price. It's true.
What is Vladimir Putin trying to do?
To
break us. This person who has made his way with such bloody actions, with everything he has said, cannot be trusted. There is no trust in such a person because he has not been a human being for a long time.
The interview itself, just looking forward to when it's coming out between Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin. Mr. Carlson says he'll publish the full video on his own website as well as on X. And importantly as well, I think it's good to note that Elon Musk has apparently said it's going to go uncensored, the interview. Whatever was spoken about, that's what's going to be shown.
Yes, absolutely, because ever since Tucker Carlson was ousted from his primetime show on Fox News last year, he now launched his show on X. And Elon Musk, yes, he did say that there will be zero attempts to block it or to try and suppress it. But that statement in itself shows that there is suppression. There is blocking of information in the United States, the beacon of democracy, you would assume, which is what they're saying and what they're advertising everywhere. there. But again, this one-sided story, this is what leads to ignorance, which is why it's important that there are presenters like Tucker Carlson who are opening up this imagination for the American public so they can see both sides of the story. And there are Americans out there who are grateful that Tucker Carlson is not afraid and he is doing his job properly and interviewing Vladimir Putin.
The only reason Tucker Carlson in Russia is controversial is because the rest of the media has bent all the way over for the censorship regime.
Why are they so afraid of Tucker talking to Putin? The corporate media does not want the American people to hear both sides. They are mouthpieces for the U.S. military-industrial complex and the Washington, D.C. political establishment. Their fear is rooted in Tucker's criticism of the military-industrial complex and government.
I'm grateful for the stupidity of Rupert Murdoch, the wisdom of Elon Musk, and the courage of Tucker Carlson that resulted in the most important interview of our time. I'm looking forward to watching it.
If everything they say about Vladimir Putin and the war in Ukraine is true, then why is the media so scared of us hearing him speak?
Tucker Carlson himself has said that when he was the primetime host on Fox News back in 2021, he tried to secure an interview with Vladimir Putin, but that led to the NSA apparently looking into his conversations and even leaking it.
I wanted to interview Putin. This was before the Ukraine war. I always wanted to go to Russia. I want to meet Putin. He's a player in world affairs. Why wouldn't I want to interview him? That's my job. So I didn't tell anybody, including at my company or my producers or whatever. I reached out to a friend of mine who I thought might know somebody. We had a bunch of exchanges about this, got in touch with the Russians. And then I got a call summer before last from a very, very close, one of my closest friends in Washington saying, hey, why don't you come up on Sunday in Washington? I need to talk to you about something. What is it? Will just come up. So I actually flew to Washington from Maine to go see this friend who's like, I know someone at NSA, not a low level person at all, who secretly likes your show, who told me that you are trying to get a Putin interview and go to Russia. I was like, nobody knew this. Not one person knew this. So the hair on my arms went up. So I knew this was real. And they have your emails and your texts, and they're going to leak them to the media to discredit you as a Putin lover. I was rattled by, I'm not often rattled just because I've been doing this for so long, but that bothered me.
And here we are 3 years later, and Tucker Carlson claims that it happened once again, that the Biden administration tried to prevent this very latest interview from taking place. But he said he didn't allow that to happen because he decided to go to Moscow anyway. And this is what the White House had to say regarding the Biden administration potentially meddling.
Carlson contended in his preview video that the Biden administration has opposed and even attempted to hinder his attempts to interview Putin. Do you have a comment on either the interview or that allegation?
Absolutely not.
And for the board,
absolutely not a comment, or absolutely not that didn't happen?
Absolutely not a comment, to be more clear, period.
Well, this time around, it will be very hard to suppress the interview. 65 million plus views of that teaser. No doubt the interview will have that much or more, I would even say. So we're all waiting. We're waiting to see when will this interview air.
Legal and media analyst Lionel says it beggars belief to see a journalist criticised in the West for simply...
So they keep going on and on. It's interesting enough that they're worried about this humanizing Putin when you can just go through the litany of interviews that were done with Zelensky and how he has been, humanized that way. And the fact of the matter is, we are in a proxy war with Russia. We are in a proxy war, and Ukraine is the battleground for it. And the fact of the matter is, they want to cut off access to somebody like Putin because Tucker has a valid point. And then I'll throw it to you, Steve, that why are we giving billions of dollars to the Ukraine to fight the Russians? I know there's, put the flag in your bio and shut up and just, be okay with us giving them money because Russia and things like that. But what is the actual, why did this conflict start? What's going on here? And, journalists used to do these things, and it was not a big deal when journalists went to interview anybody. And now, of course, with the repression of information, we're seeing that Tucker using X is the last thing they want this to happen. Yeah. Go.
No, yeah, you see that. And here's what's going on overseas in Europe. I mean, NATO's saying they're about to go to war. Poland's warning that they're going to go to war. Germany, they're going to go to war. Everyone's going to go to war with Russia in the next 2 weeks, apparently. That's This came from Paul Joseph Watson's video from 22 hours ago. If you see down here on Modernity channel, but this is one of the generals talking about, hey, get ready, we're about to go to war. It's insane. Everyone wants to go to war. Hey, I thought that consecration thing worked. I thought we were supposed to have peace. Why world sports going on here? We're bombing Jordan, Iran. These guys, we're thinking about possible war. Sweden. Who? Sweden have a military? I didn't know Sweden had an army. I mean, apparently, can't wait to go to war against the bear. Right. Who else? There's a NATO go to war against Putin right there. There's another one somewhere. Germany exercise scenario with Russia, military defense doing that. The Britons are talking about enacting a draft. Get back up. So, as he brought up, the military-industrial complex is not just here in the States; it's worldwide. It's the worldwide leader in war, as the ESPN motto would be. The worldwide leader in sports.
The worldwide leader in dropping bombs.
But I mean, I wish I knew kind of what the deal is, because it's not like Russia is the place to go to avoid globalism. They have CBDC. They have enacted the digital ID. You go to Slavstack blogspot.com. He keeps up on it all the time. They did the jab, man.
Yeah, they did.
They did everything that you see everyone else doing. They are in for it. I mean, yes, the WEF kicked them out. Slapped him on the hand. It's really nuts going, and then just seeing everyone, how it's kind of like this Israel thing. I mean, we played at the beginning that you had to read the translation, so you couldn't be lazy at the opener. The Hannibal thing, they had a Hamas, was it, or Gaza wanted to put a ceasefire for what, it was a 72-hour thing, or if it was a 3-day thing, and Israel said no. And then reports come out saying on the media, Hamas or Israel or Gaza is not doing it. They've been trying to do peace for the last 8 months.
Yep.
But Israel doesn't care. And even that Hannibal thing is basically, we will just kill all the prisoners. We'll just kill everybody. That's their directive. It's, you have somebody, we don't care. We will kill our own to get to you, and we will make it think. That's the whole Hannibal thing. But the media spins it all like, if they didn't care, if X wasn't that important to them, why? It's just like you brought up Trump earlier. Why give it extra spoof on it? Yeah. If you don't care so much, if it's just Tucker going off grid and he's a wackadoo like Clinton was saying earlier in another interview, then who cares? Now was it Mr. Beast he did an experiment video and ended up getting like $250,000 in revenue for the ads on this 15-minute video. Tucker's going to get about the same or more off this one, so he's going to be just fine. And the same people that watch CNN, maybe Fox and all, they're not going to go watch Tucker on Twitter, X, whatever you want. They're not going to do it. They might see some clips, maybe they'll see the highlight videos, but if I just don't know. I mean, we're trusting Elon, who's putting brain chips in people's heads right now, and literally just did it the other day. So, everything's fine. And it's a crazy time to be. We just need to get those new Apple goggles.
Oh yeah, they're out. Yep, $3,500. You can go. People are already putting them on their face.
Yeah, people are already walking in or driving with them, running into trees, things like that. It's weird. I mean, if this isn't a time, obviously, to say, hey, focus on getting Lent's coming up. If the things that are going on in the world isn't raise your eyebrows going, we might need to pray a little bit harder, do a little bit more penance, things like that. Or to the point of, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. It doesn't matter as long as we're in the good state of grace. Again, we brought up a couple months ago, I said, if we get nuked and you're in a state of grace, fine. And people freaked out over that. Again, our focus isn't on what we should be. Yes, we're bringing these news cycles things up. But trust me, I don't go to bed going, I wonder what Russia's doing tomorrow. I wonder what the Biden's doing tomorrow. I do. I post things up just to get other people news, ideas of what's going on. Like there was a report out the other day about the. Everybody knows I'm doing gardening in the back. They're going after, they want a carbon footprint for homegrown food 5 times greater than those grown conventionally. So they want to stop people from growing in their backyard because it's bad. You got to get the GMO pesticide and laced poison food that we provide at a higher cost. It just makes you want to garden harder. It's like voting harder. You go to garden harder. It's a clown. It's just like the Trump thing. It's good TV drama. Gets your eyeballs focused over here. It's a distraction in a sense because it's distracting from what you should be doing. I don't know how long the interview is, but what's it going to do for the rest of society? If you're paying any kind of attention, you already know what's. If you're watching this, you probably don't do the Putner idiotic stuff. I've seen people on other platforms call it Putner. You may actually have a brain. You're thinking rationally for a change. There's did you see that clip I forwarded the other day about this? It was a professor, and he's talking about he's trying to get guys to think, critically. And the guy says something about the who's the Harry Potter lady?
J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, that she's a bigot. And he goes, well, explain to me that. How? Where did you hear that? Oh, so you heard that from some third party source telling you how to think. Tell me what she said to make and describe to me how's that. By the end of it, he goes, I feel like an idiot. I go, yeah.
Because it's easy just to repeat the talking points.
Very easy. Here's a 5-second clip. Here we're going to tell you we're the media. We're going to tell you how to think.
Yeah, that's exactly how. Now everybody's worried about Tucker and this Russian interview. Meanwhile, your vaulted federal government's about to start another war. Well, they already kind of did last Friday with Iran. And they're just going to keep hyping that sucker up. And most people are going to look around one day and be like, when did we start a war with Iran? Well, we started a war with Iran last week. But now we're just ratcheting that up more and more, despite what the guy in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue said about another guy who used to occupy 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Is yet to hit Iran directly. The Iranians could care less how many Houthis you kill. They could care less how many Iraqi militia you killed. The only way they will change their behavior and stop killing Americans and attacking our troops and trying to bomb ships in the Red Sea is for Joe Biden to hit their oil infrastructure and start killing their soldiers inside of Iran. I'm not asking to invade Iran, but I'm calling on President Biden tonight. Go to the source of the problem. If you don't hit the Iranian oil infrastructure and hit them in the wallet and make them fear you, they're going to keep killing our soldiers. To the 3 families whose loved one lost their life, it breaks my heart this was all preventable. So, Mr. President, hit Iran and hit them now and hit them hard to protect Americans in harm's way.
Us, bring it on. We'll blow you off the friggin' map. I'm not worried about losing a war with Iran. They should be worried about losing.
The president will not tolerate attacks on American troops, and neither will I.
Thinking critically, where were these troops at?
Why were they there? Yeah.
It's so terrible that Iran put their country so close to United States bases.
Our teammates were killed by radical militias backed by Iran and operating inside Syria and Iraq. In the aftermath of the vile Hamas terrorist assault on Israel on October 7th, terrorist groups backed by Iran and funded by Iran have tried to create even more turmoil, including the Houthis attacking commercial shipping in the Red Sea. So this is a dangerous moment in the Middle East. We will continue to work to avoid a wider conflict in the region. But we will take all necessary actions to defend the United States, our interests, and our people.
Explain to me. You're going to defend our people. Okay, if this, quote unquote, if we're over here in the Western Hemisphere, how have we been invaded by Iran? Somebody help me.
We're looking at right now. Why do we have guys scattered across Syria? Why do we have guys scattered across Iraq? Why are we leaving ourselves vulnerable to the potential for an attack to Iran?
No, I agree. I mean, I think the phrase was used, sitting ducks. Why are the ducks there, right? I think we've learned a lot in the last couple of years that we we shouldn't be there. I mean, look, this will be the first time in my life that I agree with Joy Reid. Not another effing.
This will be the first time in my life I agree with Greg too.
War, right? I'm warred out. We had Ukraine. It's 2 years. Gaza, Iran. You know, one day they're good guys. The next day they're bad guys. Then they're good guys again. Then we're not sure. And then we talk. You know, a wise man once said, and I wish I remembered his name, it's big if we make it big. And that's what we do. We take things and we make it big. And why is it that we only have consequences for actions not in the United States? They, like you said, if you harm Americans, there will be payback. Well, there are Americans being harmed in the United States every damn day. We don't do shit about the border. We don't do anything about crime. When will we send a message to the illegal immigrants or the fentanyl suppliers or the smash and grabbers? Or hell, why not send a message to the people who assault cops? I'm not saying bombing. I'm saying actually creating disincentives, actually punishing people who deserve punishment in the United States and protecting millions of Americans here. I don't want our troops getting bombed over there. I prefer that they be home here. So you put the sitting ducks out there, then we got to go send some virtue signaling message to show that we're doing something and that we know is not doing anything. And then we got to sit here and act like armchair experts talking about this crap for 17 minutes. I'm sick of it.
100%. Here's Biden in 2007.
Clear, and I made it clear to the president, that if he takes this nation to war in Iran without congressional approval, I will make it my business to impeach him. Yes! That's a fact.
You people got played.
After 9/11,
you people got played. Really
partly
hard.
fault Iran because they're offering to do eye operations for Iraqis who need medical attention. That's not, and knew that they were next on the hit list. And so, of course, they got engaged. They lost 1 million people. I said, is it classified? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, you remember that? He said, sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Yep, that's it. You know, the defense contractors, they need their money. And that's really the military-industrial complex, which runs everything, demands that the bombings will continue until morale improves.
If you watch the Super Bowl this weekend or watch any game on Fox, they'll usually say at the bottom, was it simulcasting in 186 nations in U.S. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. Usually at bases, things like that, subs, cruise ships, things like that. You ever wonder why in the is the sun never sets on the American Empire? Bruce Fine wrote a book on the American Empire. If you guys can find that, get it. Really good. And it'll change your way you think about things on here. I remember a friend of mine's dad. He was upset at me because I said, "Why do we still have bases in Germany? Are we still fighting the Nazis? Really? Is World War II still going? Oh, well, we have to be there. Why do we have to be there? If Germany this was in Columbia, if Germany had a base in Columbia, South Carolina next to the stadium, you'd be upset. Oh, yeah, well, we can't come into USA. Oh, so it's okay when we do it. It's okay when we go over to different places and put a base there and then tell people, this is our land. We steal the land from them and put a place up that says this is America. How's that work?
Yep. Well, it's also the backing of the dollar, right? That's the big thing. You know, they back it by force, and then they just drop boatloads of it into these countries so they can use the dollar to prop up our bloated economy that we don't really do anything with either, because we import everything from China. So it's really just one crazy globalist wheel, if you will. And that's really all the U.S. is good for. And Trump did, to whatever you want to think about Trump did talk about this when he was like, if we're going to be in these countries, you pay us, right? Pay us to be in these countries if you want us to protect you, blah, 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 blah. And the elites didn't like that simply because, you know, that's part of their plan. They don't mind being in these countries because they'll just I mean, we've talked about it tons of times on the show, the 10-year war in Yemen that nobody has talked about, in the fact that we have participated and helped the Saudis genocide a group of people in Yemen, just because. And that's because we don't have any real value here except in our military, and that military's got to get used. Those bombs got to get dropped. They can't sit around forever. They got expiration dates on them. So that's kind of what it is. You can't let them sit around. They got to get blown up somewhere. You might as well do it in the sandbox, which is, the bad thing about Afghanistan. For them, it was a nice sandbox. They could put their toys in there, blow up a couple mountains here and there, and everybody was happy. And that was the ticket for them for a long time.
And it goes into pop culture. Toby Keith just died a couple days ago, and it was the big song that he came out with was that war propaganda, Red, White, and Blue. And the Dixie Chicks didn't like that too much, and they were one of the first ones that went after Bush Jr. and the whole bombing in Iraq, and they got crucified for that. I mean,
but to be fair, they were terrible artists anyway.
Well, not this. That's not saying, hey, I love this. I love the three girls or whatever. It's just, hey, they were outspoken about something that we now go back going, hey, they were right on that.
They were.
I did think it was funny when someone said that was Toby versus him was the Tupac versus Biggie of country music.
It was pretty big because at that point, country music still had that silo of being pro-America, pro-patriot. I know South Park did the episode where it was like country was patriotic and rock and roll was like anti-establishment. And so that, and I will say this about Toby dying, the fact that whatever you thought about him, the guy was pro-American. And he was pro, like the country, this union's actually good, him and others. Those people are starting to die off and they're being replaced culturally with people who absolutely hate you. So there is something to be said about that. Whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, that is what is taking place. But yeah, Toby was, Toby was not great for the propaganda effort because he was all about it. And that's what his thing was. And so it's supercharged. We're in the GWOT, the Global War on Terror. We'll be on it until the U.S. empire falls, right? Until it falls and goes away. And even then, whatever remnant is left of these United States will continue to put on that because that is the destiny. It's their version of what the Roman Empire did when they conquered everybody. The Romans conquered.
Even if Texas leaves, let's just pretend Texas does do it. Greg Abbott, who's also an Israel firster,
WEF guy too.
He's not going to drop any kind of. He's going to keep the war on terror going in Texas. I guarantee that.
Oh, they'll sign. That's how they'll let them go if they sign a treaty, an alliance with these United States that we support the global war on terror. That would be absolutely necessary to do so. 100% in that way. So yeah, that's what we're looking for there. It's just crazy in that regard. But so we got a couple other things left here. One more thing we'll cover before we head out is Mark Zuckerberg was dragged into Congress last week for another show hearing, and it got a little interesting towards parts of it.
Here's some information from a whistleblower who came before the Senate, testified under oath in public. He worked for you. It's a senior executive. Here's what he showed he found when he studied your products. So, for example, this is girls between the ages of 13 and 15 years old. 37% of them reported that they had been exposed to nudity on the platform unwanted in the last 7 days. 24% said that they had experienced unwanted sexual advances they'd been propositioned in the last 7 days. 17% said they had encountered self-harm content pushed at them in the last 7 days. Now, I know you're familiar with these stats because he sent you an email where he lined it all out. I mean, we've got a copy of it right here. My question is, who did you fire for this?
I love
Who
in
got
America
fired
where you
because
just
of
get
that?
blown up stuff.
Senator, we study all of this
Who's in
because
charge
it's
of
important and we want to improve our services.
Well, you just told
And
me
I
a
think
second
that
ago
the-
you stated that there was no linkage. Who did you
Senator,
fire?
Yeah, I said you mischaracterized.
37% of teenage girls between 13 and 15 were exposed to unwanted nudity in a week on Instagram. You knew about it. Who did you fire?
Senator, this is why we're building all.
Who
these
did you
different
fire?
Tools. Senator, I don't think that's.
Who did you fire?
I'm not going to answer that. That's.
Because you didn't fire anybody, right? You didn't take any significant
I don't think
action.
it's appropriate to talk about like
It's not
individual HR
appropriate.
decisions.
Do you know who's sitting behind you? You've got families from across the nation whose children are either severely harmed or gone, and you don't think it's appropriate to talk about steps that you took?
We'll play the rest, but this is one of those first times that I'm like, man, I'm on the side of Zuck on this. Who's behind you? Oh yeah, the parents that didn't have the guts to tell their kids not to go online, or the ones that just gave them a thing and say, "Hey, go ahead and get on Facebook or Instagram." Oh, we're gonna let.
Well, they were too busy. The moms and dads were too busy making content for Instagram, so they had to give their kids something to do while they did that, or using their kids in that content.
Put all the blame on Mark. All right, Doritos, whether the chip thing. I mean, is Doritos getting sued for something like that? Hey, he should have turned it around on him. Are you guys going to get sued for all the stuff you guys do to people?
Yeah. Are we going to drag McDonald's in here for cheeseburgers?
Yeah, is McDonald's fault for yes?
Let me ask you this. Have you compensated any of the victims?
Sorry?
Have you compensated any of the victims?
I would compensate them when the U.S. government compensates all the people they've bombed for the last 40 years.
These girls, have you compensated them?
I don't believe so.
Why not? Don't you think they deserve some compensation for what your platform has done? Help with counseling services?
A voluntary platform, ladies
dealing
and
with
gentlemen.
the issues?
Yeah, did Mark put a gun to these people's heads? Hey, get online. What? Parents can't parent anymore.
That your service has caused?
Our job is to make sure that we build tools to help keep people safe.
Are you going to compensate them?
Senator, our job and what we take seriously is making sure that we build industry-leading tools to find harmful content,
make money.
take it off the services,
To make money.
and to build tools that empower parents.
So you didn't take any action. You didn't take any action. You didn't fire anybody. You haven't compensated a single victim. Let me ask you this. There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? Would you like to do so now? They're here. You're on national television. Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product? Show them the pictures.
Will this stop?
Would you like to
Will this
apologize for what
actually
you've
stop
done to these good people?
Any of this stuff that happens on. I'm sorry. You should have literally said, "I'm sorry you weren't better parents."
And this is why we invested so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
You know,
I'm sorry you weren't
Mr.
better
Zuckerberg,
parents. That's all I
why
can say.
should your company not be sued for this? Why is it that you
Sue
can
them, because
claim you
a
hide
judge,
behind a liability shield? You
halfway
can't be held
decent judge will be
accountable?
like,
Shouldn't you be
"Listen,
held
what do you
accountable
want me to
personally?
fine them for?"
Will you take personal responsibility?
Senator, I think I've already answered this. I mean, these
Well,
are
try this
serious
again.
issues.
Will you take personal responsibility?
Senator, I view
Yeah,
my
sure, whatever.
job and
As long as everyone else doesn't take personal
Yeah, sure,
responsibility.
whatever.
the job of
I
our
don't care.
company is building the best tools that we can.
It goes on for a while, but you get the point. It's kabuka theater.
You know, the Facebook, Instagram to TikTok to porn pipeline is real, and it could be shut down tomorrow if people just stopped using these platforms. It's and yes, we're on them right now. I get it. Hypocritical. You never seen one before. I understand that, but there are plenty of parents that say, no, you can't be on there. You can't be on Instagram. You can't be on Facebook. You can't have any of these things because that's right. And I'm just gonna sue you because I have emotional distress. Well, you were more than happy to shake what your mama gave you for your Instagram clout. So it's kind of crazy. And so it's really just ridiculous to see how, Mark's like, whatever, I'll stand up and do this thing, but you guys are going to fund me and you guys are going to come begging to me when you want the information that I have, all the data that I've collected. So yeah, I'm sorry about this. Okay, now let me get back my private jet and fly back to California. Are we done here? So that's really that whole thing. It's just, you're right. It's kabuki theater. It's stupid. It's senators and politicians justifying paychecks.
They have no problems trying to scare other people, though. We'll put you in a desk and we'll put the gun towards you, but how dare you come retaliating against us? We'll crawl behind the thing called an insurrection and throw you in jail.
Yep, that's all it is, man. It's just ridiculous to
There's
see this.
no fear out of people in DC.
Yep, and it's great for was that Jim Jordan? Or not Jim Jordan, whoever he was. I don't even remember them anymore.
He was a Coke and Pepsi. He was a
Oh,
Coke.
yeah.
I forget his name already.
He's one. Somebody maybe knows. It's great fundraising for him. He'll put that on a fundraising letter. He'll make tons of money from it, but that's it. That's all he's getting. That's all that's going to come from it. That's it. So foolish.
Should have had a Bud Light there.
Yeah, well, don't worry. You'll see plenty of Bud Light this weekend.
I did see that Trump was thinking about having Dylan Mulvaney as his VP running mate.
That would be amazing. That would be just so great. Because it's Josh Hawley. Thank you. Yep, it's Josh Hawley.
Yes.
Imagine that, because Maga would be like, we love him now. He's great. He's so awesome. He's a trailblazer. And if he was a real troll, he would make Dylan Mulvaney his running mate just to see what would happen. He's like, I'm still gonna win. Doesn't matter. More of a female than Michelle. That's all I'll say right there. Who's more female, Big Mike or Dylan? We'll see. But that would be fantastic to see something like that take place. But that is it for our stories today. And if Steve wants to put somebody in the cry room and give us, well, no, Nikki Haley's always in the cry room. She's in the cry room until she gets out of the primaries. She's out.
Yeah, I was going to go with the Massachusetts story. You mean Massachusetts for sending the mom to jail or found her guilty for rolling son's crime. So again, no personal responsibility. We're going to blame everyone. And now they're going after, I think, his dad as well. So the thing is that her kid shot up a school, I think. And I mean, obviously she had no clue that her son was about to do that and didn't see it in the future. And so she's being charged with voluntary manslaughter, I think it is. My saint of the week, I'm going to go with Derek Bros, because he's taken by himself a one-man army going after the fluoride issues. And he's in California, I think it is, for 5 days of a lawsuit that's going on. And even back at home, locally, is the southeast side of Charlotte, Matthews, Union County. They're looking to ban fluoride in the drinking water too. They're just came out a couple of days ago, and the dentists are up in arms. Don't take our fluoride out. We got to keep your water poisoned. But yeah, so there's a great move of banning fluoride in the drinking water, which is a great step in the right direction.
I'm sure Alex Jones feels so vindicated, but that they're finally taking fluoride out of the water, because that's one of his major talking points. But
Derek got it banned in Houston. He was trying to run for mayor, and they kicked him off the ballot. But him being outspoken enough, they still got the reason why he even was running, still got passed, and still it was the whole fluoride issue, and they ended up tackling that there. So now he's out there in California getting interviews, doing this whole big thing out there. And for the internet, there's a positive side. People didn't know about it until all this started coming out and starting to catch these Hunger Games, starting to catch some fire. Yep,
that's great. Yeah, it is very well. I'm gonna have a out of left field saint of the week, and it's just I'm gonna put Ronnie D. I'm gonna put Ronnie D in there because the old Ronnie D is back. The one that was held hostage for the primary, he's gone. But he's coming out with some pretty impressive stuff. What he's been doing at the state level for the people of Florida, for the people in which he was elected to, work for. So good for good old Ronnie D. I still think he's trying to position himself as like Secretary of State or something if Trump wins, because that would be his only real path forward. But good for him. And I think if you look at him now, he just looks like such a happy dude. He hated running for president. I think his wife, and there was a lot of money on the table and his wife wanted to. So that's how it
I
goes.
wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. His wife wanted to do it.
His wife really wanted to. I mean, she dresses for the job. She was dressing like Jackie O. And I get it. You know what I mean? That's understandable. And I'm sure he had plans to do it. I didn't think he wanted to do it now. I think he wanted to do it in 28. But I think she was like, "Nah, you gotta do it now." So yeah, gotta do. You see what the wife says. But there you go. So yeah, that's it for this episode of from News from the View. Please like, subscribe, and share to share the news from the Pew. We will talk to y'all next week. Follow us on the social medias, and I will take many pictures of Steve and post them from the Catholic Men's Conference when we finally meet.
Definitely put
Vlad will be there too, so it'll be great. And we'll talk to y'all next week. Pray for us for safe travels and a successful conference. And God bless, and Viva Cristo Rey.